Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Today is the big day. I'm finally starting the service job of my customer's 670ZX from Nakamichi. I am extremely nervous about this, but after all this time I've spent getting myself ready for this day, I'm ready. Let's just do it. So this is going to go as slowly as it has to go in order for me to do a good job on this. I'm not really planning anything in the way of videos until this project is finished and the deck goes back to the customer. Now there's a few things I should mention about this before we actually get started. And I think the first thing on the list is the customer has elected to pay a little extra to get the entire audio path recapped on this thing. Basically, that means what we're doing on the audio chain of events here is the same thing I did with my 680ZX with a minor exception. What I did on the 680ZX was I used Nichicon UES, UKZ, and Fine Gold, a combination of all three of those. On this deck, if you remember those gray capacitors I showed you in the last video on this deck, well, it's very likely those are the ones causing the high frequency roll-off on this deck. And instead of using the UES parts like I used on my 680ZX, the customer has requested the use of the WEMA MKS2 instead. And I'd like to hear how those sound as well, so we're going to go in with them. Anyhow, I've got a bunch of parts set aside here. I've got one brand new idler for this transport. I've got 4 more incoming, but I've got one ready here. And these are the meter lamps here. I'll show them to you. These are from AliExpress, so I hope they're decent quality. And I hope they fit. I think they should. They look like they're the right size. Had to order them because I didn't realize that I didn't have them yet. And here are all the replacements for the orange capacitors in there, along with the MKS2s that are going into the audio circuits. Basically what I'm going to be doing today is sort of getting ready for transport service by future-proofing the deck so that it's going to have a good power supply and good capacitors long enough to actually get the service job done, and then I'll go back in and basically go through the deck and replace all the other capacitors it needs. We'll put those right there. Mentioned in the last video that I was going to recap everything above 100 microfarads, but that's only to start with. If I begin to find problems in the other smaller values, I will replace them too. And it's very possible I will find more bad capacitors than that. Anyhow, I will deal with that as time goes by. And that's pretty much it for that. Now, in addition to that, the customer has reminded me, I had almost forgotten because I've been so busy getting ready for today, but he reminded me that this has an issue with popping when it's turned off. That is most likely an issue with the power mute transistors in the deck. So I had a little look around. I tracked down the actual component values for that, and it turns out that KP Components had those brand new. So I bought 10 of them. This deck uses 8 of them. So how about we go over to the main computer for a second, and I'll tell you about what I'm planning to do with these power supply capacitors. Okay, we are looking at the power supply section of the deck right now. You can see the 2 meter lamps in the circuit right there. They're in parallel. So what the deal is, or what the plan is, this 6800 microfarad part is getting upsized to 8200. This one's getting upsized to 3300. This one's going up to 3300, and this one is going up to 5600. I've ordered some special Panasonic FRs just for this deck and just for that location. Probably won't be the only deck I use them on, but I figured I want to make this great for my customer, so that's the way to do it, I think, in this particular unit. And I'll show you the muting transistors as well, if I can find them here. See, here's the power mute line right there. That's going to be the one causing the power off pop. That goes down, let's see, it originates from this part of the power supply here, so I'm going to have to pay special attention to these capacitors as well, and maybe these transistors too. I'll check them and see if they're any good. If they're not good, I'll have to get something out of my parts decks. I got two parts decks, the 481 and the 482, in case I need them. 481 is obviously never going to live again. It's got multiple bad transistors in it, so whatever. I can pull parts out of that if I need them. And then the customer won't have to wait too long. Anyway, I'll check that capacitor right there. Actually, no, I won't check it. I'll just replace it. It's part of the power supply. Full recap on a power supply. That's what I'm doing with that. Anyhow, where's the other end of the power mute? See if I can find it here. It's here somewhere. Okay, there it is right there. Pin 28 goes up to a diode here. Maybe I should check that as well, but that's for the meter mute. That most likely is good. And the two transistors on the power mute are right here, Q204 and Q104, one per channel. These are part of the power supply as well. Those will get changed. I may upsize those. I may not. I'll think about it. I'm not exactly sure what I would upsize them to. Maybe 2200. But like I said, I'll think about it. I think those regulate the entire audio path. So, or the audio circuits, I mean. Yeah, plus 12, minus 12. They go all over the place in here. So maybe. I will think about that some more. I'll throw Panasonic FR in there regardless, because that's the best parts for the job, but like I said, I'll think about it. In my 680ZX, I used a couple of great big Nichicon UKZ parts to replace those larger orange capacitors I showed you in the last video on this deck. The reason I can't use those in this deck is because they are too physically large. They will rattle themselves around and they will break the solder joints underneath if I try to use them here. With that being said, I have now ordered the 25-volt versions of those parts. So those might fit, and those are expected any day now also. So if I can get away with UKZ parts there, it'll happen. Like I said, customer wants me to treat this deck the way I treat my own decks, and that's kind of the way I would do it on my own decks. It's also the kind of way I did do it on my 680ZX. I just found an issue. I wonder where that guy's supposed to go. I'm going to have to track that down. Clearly it's something to do with the auto Azimuth board, and I have found the problem. It's supposed to go to pin 3 up there. You see how there's no wire actually going to that pin right now? That's where that one went, so I'm going to have to fix that. I'll just solder it back in place. There's enough slack here to fix this easily. Unfortunately, I don't think this explains the popping on the power off. It could, but it's the record enable line for the auto Azimuth board. So, I don't know. Anyway, I will fix that, and I will continue with my recap job here, and I will also want to get in under here to repaste all those regulators down there. Probably not the most fun job I've ever had, but I'll get it done. The actual thermal paste on there actually looks pretty good, because I think ESL would have serviced that, but whatever. I'll repaste it anyway. I'm being paid to do this, so I'm going to do it. Alright folks, I am in the middle of changing the power supply capacitors, and I just noticed this big yellow one here has a date code on it. This would have been installed by ESL. It's one of those orange capacitor replacements. I will probably be going in with a WEMA film in that location, but anyway, the date code on that is 1996, so that is when ESL had this. So this speaks volumes as to how well ESL does their work. For this deck to be performing as well as it is 30 years later, impressive actually. So very happy with their quality of service here. Anyway, I'm still working away at this, but as you can see, I've gotten the capacitors under there done, and also held in with RTV sealant, just to make sure they stay in place. And I found another one of those gray 1 microfarad parts down in here. That's the replacement. Here's the original right here, if I can show you. This is out of spec. It's, I think, 0.7 microfarads. So I'm going to seek and destroy all of these and just replace them all. If I find too much more of this stuff with the low-value Shoeis, they're all getting done, I think. Anyway, I better keep going. I got a lot of work to do. I haven't tested any of these yet, but I probably will. Alrighty then, the preliminary recap has been finished. Results incoming, but first, I'm noticing that the pointers on the meters are not quite exactly where they should be, so I'm going to have to deal with that. I was hoping not to, but whatever, I'll get to it. Anyway, these are the good capacitors here. None of these are even remotely close to failing, but like I said, they're really old, so good to recap them, especially since most of them are power supply. Actually, all of them are power supply, but whatever. These all tested good. I didn't really find too many issues with them. There's a 560 picofarad one that's kind of high ESR, but not too terrible. These three here are the ones ESL installed. They are all good. No issues, but I had the WEMA films, so that's what got replaced in there instead of those. I'll show you where they are. Right down there, you can see the two big WEMAs there. Those are the 4700s, and the .068 is just down right yonder next to that coil. Fits a lot better in there than that big yellow one did, but I will keep the ESL ones. They're not bad, but they are 30 years old, so I didn't want to keep them in this deck. The bad ones are right here. These are all very high ESR to extremely high ESR. Or rather, actually I should say these are marginal. They're 1.4 ohms ESR. These are the 100s at 16 volts. And these are the ones that kind of like to fail. So best to get rid of those. The gray ones are those bipolar ones. And those are all bad. Some of these are extremely high ESR, almost 200 ohms. Now, when it comes to these two capacitors here, would you like to guess where these were in the deck? Well, I'll tell you in a second. But they're both very high ESR. They've failed, both of them. This one is really bad. It's one of the low noise Shoei capacitors in the deck. 50 volts, 1 microfarad. I've already checked these with the big meter, so I know how good they are. I can't get the tweezers to cooperate. That thing's 80 ohms ESR, 80. The new one is a quarter of that value. And because I teased you, I'm going to show you exactly where those are in the circuit. Okay, here they are right here. C421 and 422. Guess what these do? I believe these are the delay for the muting. So I think we might have found exactly what the issue is with the popping noise that the customer was talking about. See, the mute stuff is all up here, and they go right down to that circuit. And both of those capacitors were bad. So I will tell you that I have checked the deck out. I've tested it already, and a couple of things stand out. One, there was no power off pop or thump or whatever. And the other thing is, it's got a lot of its high end back. Most likely because those gray capacitors, there's two of them directly in the playback amplifier. So I think we are making a big improvement with this deck, but still lots more to do. I've ordered some new capacitors now because you see these parts here? The ones I have are almost a little bit too big to go in there. I have 35 volt parts for that, so I have ordered 16 volt parts for that now, so they'll fit a bit better. I used the 35 volt parts in my 680ZX, but I remember it was kind of tough to get them in there, so I'm just going to go ahead and get the right parts for the job. And the right parts for the job are actually cheaper, so I'm sure the customer will appreciate that. Okay, folks, we have a special delivery. My extra UKZ parts came in. I got 330 microfarads at 25 volts, 100 at 50 volts, and here are the 220s at 25 volts. Let's just check these against the size of one of the 50 volt parts I used in my 680ZX, which is right here. Look at the size difference there. I think I'm actually going to get these to work in this deck, so I think we're going to go ahead and do it. That's what I think. They look like they're the actual legit Nichicon parts too, so I think we're going to just go ahead and do it. With that being said, it is now Wednesday, and I am feeling entirely too sick to get into the transport today. So, I know I probably shouldn't do this on a customer machine, but I'm going to continue with the capacitors today. I'm going to do the audio chain today, immediately, right now, after I get done talking to you. Because ESL had this thing last and did a phenomenal job, it apparently seems like, I think we can just go ahead and do this. With other more questionable decks, I won't want to do it that way because you're risking throwing a bunch of new capacitors into something that may not be fixable, but we know this one's fixable. Even if by some miracle something plastic is broken in the transport, I've got 2 donor transports I can get into for parts. I'm not worried about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and do some more capacitors and pretend I'm not as sick as I am today. I don't know why I'm sick again. It's a cold or something. I don't know. Anyway, you guys might like to see the parts I used for those 1000 microfarads. That's them down there. They're Panasonic FR 2200 microfarads, 35 volts, and they fit perfect. That's why I went with them. Otherwise, I could have gone with the factory size, which was 1000 microfarads again, but I didn't have any thousands that would have fit there anywhere near as well as these FRs do. And of course, you can see that I've gone in with the silicone again to hold them in place. It's just good practice when it comes to these really big capacitors. These 2 back here are getting replaced again with the more appropriately sized ones I have coming in for this sideboard. These do not need to be 35 volts. They do not need to be sticking up off the board this high, so we're going to do that. And I think the other thing I might do today is I'm going to replace the line in and line out jacks with the gold ones. The customer has indicated he wants those. And I got lots of them, so sure, why not? I'm hoping I don't break too many more of these little push rivets here, but I've got new ones in case I need them. I had to buy those for the 680ZX because they all broke, every single one of them coming out of there. So it is what it is. But I can tell you that these fit the 680ZX without any drilling or anything required to the back panel, so these will just drop right in. I just have to break the glue that they've used holding on the this little board back here. It's annoying, but it has to be done. And there might be some parts of that little board left behind, but it won't affect anything except internal appearances. So, customer wants them, so I'm going to install them. Probably today, like I said. Alright folks, just going through looking for all the audio capacitors, and I think I found them all, but I just found something else that's kind of interesting. You see these 2 capacitors here, C124 and 224? Those were those gray Shoei caps that were going way out of spec. The bipolar ones. And guess what they do? Well, they're in the muting circuit. I'm sensing a pattern here, so I kind of think I've got the muting circuits fixed now. I'm still going to pull these two and check them, but I'm no longer sure in any way that any of these transistors actually need replacement. I've got them if I need them, but I think I have actually fixed the problem now. So I'm using two really expensive bipolar WEMA films there now. We'll just keep them there, might as well. So hopefully there's no more problems with popping on the power on and off and whatnot. These two transistors here are responsible for muting the outputs when, let's see if I can drag this over. They're actually from the monitor source, I think. Although it says Q there, so maybe it's for the RAM stuff. The RAM stuff. The Ramstein stuff. I don't know. Anyway, I gotta get busy replacing some more capacitors here, so I'm gonna do that. Du hast mich. All right, folks, audio path is complete, and I will show you exactly what's been changed and where it's been changed. These two caps down here are in the headphone amplifier. Those are fine gold. I'm very happy with the way those turned out. And there's some more fine gold down in there, like all four of those are fine gold. These two up here are fine gold. And there's lots of fine gold everywhere. I'm happy to report, however, that the two big UKZ parts actually do fit there, almost. They're not quite perfect, but I've gone ahead and siliconed them together just to make sure they stay in place. These two down here are UKZ. Those are 47 microfarads. They're directly in the audio path from the playback head. And there are four more UKZ parts. You can just kind of see one right down there. And then the other two of that value are in here. You can kind of see one right there, and then there's another one right there. Those are the outputs from the Dolby ICs. And you can see two more fine golds there. The two that were the most trouble were these two down in here because of the ribbon cable blocking them, but I got them. One of the traces was damaged on one of those. I fixed it. And these two here are technically not in the audio path, but they're audio path adjacent. So those are Panasonic FR now, 47 microfarad. I'm still waiting for my new caps to replace these, but those will get done. Anywho, the audio path is done, like I mentioned. And how does it sound? Well, I have been listening to this, and it is brilliant now. And that may be a good thing, that may be a bad thing, because it kind of sounds like it has a little too much treble. So what would be causing that is maybe these are too low in ESR now. Like Nakamichi would have been expecting these to be bipolar electrolytics, and they would have designed the circuit accordingly. So I'm going to leave these in for now, but if they don't work out, and if I'm not happy with them, I will tell the customer, and I will probably go in with the green UES parts like I used in my 680ZX there. Anyhow, the reason why some of these are UKZ parts is because they were special from the factory. Those parts were originally these. These are Nichicon something or others. And I've heard that these are lower leakage than anything we can get today. So I'm not sure exactly if that's the case or not, but I thought since they were extra special caps from the factory, then I would go in with the UKZ parts. Otherwise, on my 680ZX, I didn't have any of these, so I used fine gold almost exclusively in that deck. Mostly because the UKZ parts didn't even fit that deck. Anyway, like I said, I have been listening to it. I decided to risk certain doom because I haven't done the transport service yet, and I tried this tape. This is the last one I made on the ZX9 before I stuck it on the shelf and got the XK009 in its place instead for now. This is a PS2S from Axia. Special tape. And this is designed to be reminding me of all my trips to the mountains when I can't afford to go to the mountains anymore, because it's getting close to that point now. Anyway, I tried the first track, Chicanes Nevertheless, and I tried the last track, which is Ojai Catching Flies. Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, this tape was extremely impressive in this machine. It is a brilliant playback machine now, I gotta tell you. But it's going to be interesting to see how it records now, because I did all the recording audio path as well. Anyhow, we'll get to that point at some point. But that is the end of the good news, and now I have some bad news. The turn-off pop is still there. I know that because it gave me a nice big thump maybe 2 or 3 seconds after power off, so I'm going to still have to look into that. Anyway, I will. I've got the replacement transistors if I need them, like I said. And that's it for now, I guess. I got to keep going. I want to recap this entire board up here yet, because this is the auto azimuth board. And sometimes these are known to really hunt for the azimuth if this board isn't in tip-top shape. So I want to get all these capacitors done as well. And apparently they still do it even when they're in tip-top shape. So there have been people that have come up with modifications for this circuit to improve the tuning time on that. I will look into that later. That's not for today. Okay, one last little update for the day before I go off and watch my wrestling. Projector's already online. I have replaced the power mute transistors now, Q104 and 204. And I just wanted to mention what I got for beta gain on these. It's about 700-ish on both of them. And the replacements, these things, the ones I put in there are a matched pair of 1300 beta gain transistors. So I don't know if it's fixed or not. I can tell you that it didn't pop when I powered it off the last time I checked it, which was a few minutes after I changed those transistors. So hopefully that's done now and fixed. I'm probably going to go ahead and change the rest of them now because the beta gain is so much higher on the new ones, but we will see. Anyway, I wanted to show you something. I have one of these things now. It's a transistor curve tracer. I haven't had a chance to learn how to use this because I've been way too busy, but I bought this to help me try and fix those amplifiers. So I'm going to have to figure out how to use this at some point because it's all in Chinese and it's, I don't know, not the easiest thing to learn. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's update, I guess. I didn't get a chance to do the line in and line out jacks yet with the gold ones. I just didn't have time. What I did was, instead, was I fought this side panel for quite a long time to repaste the regulators down under there. And I did something that neither Nakamichi nor ESL did when they had this. This entire side panel is now thermally mated to the heatsink for the regulators. So I used a bunch of thermal paste to do that, and now this entire side panel is helping to cool those regulators. Completely unnecessary, but I like to go the extra mile for some of these things. Anyway, so far sounds amazing, and I hope that power off pop is fixed. I don't know if it is. I'm still waiting on those other new capacitors for the sideboard here, but it is what it is. They'll come. Okay, it is now Saturday the 20th, and the idea was originally for me to get into the transport of this today. However, I woke up entirely too sick again, something I ate, and I'm not really feeling up to it, so I'm going to continue with the small stuff today. I've replaced 2 of the muting transistors, and I haven't had a power off pop since, so I'm going to go after the other 6 of them today, probably. And after that, I'll pull the face off, and then start working on the controls, get them cleaned, swap all the lamps, or at least as many as I can, and then probably pull the transport as well for service tomorrow, I think. But first, let me show you something. We got the bling bling going on back here now. I am happy to report that the old jack panel was not glued to the back panel, so it just came right off, no problems. And now I've got nice, pretty gold-plated connectors in there. The wiring I have used to wire these up is really flexible stuff. This is designed for connections that flex a lot, so I decided to go ahead and use that stuff. I use the same stuff on my 680ZX. Works well, I like it. And it's really easy to strip these wires too, which is really nice. Anyhow, I gotta get back to work here and start doing some more stuff, but first I need to talk to you about a design flaw that these decks have. That apparently was not corrected by ESL when they had this deck. And said design flaw has to do with the cam motor right here. You can see there's only one wire that goes to that motor. That is the positive for the motor. The negative goes through the motor body, and that is the design flaw. You see, the metal that this motor is made of is a different kind of metal than this aluminum plate here is that it's bolted to. So the problem is when you rely on this aluminum plate for the entire ground for that motor, you get galvanic corrosion back in there. And what can happen is over time that corrosion can break down the connection for the negative. So you end up with these not working anymore. So I've already fixed that on my 680ZX, and I will do that the same way here as well. Basically, I'll run a new ground wire from over here back to the chassis. It's really not that hard. On my 680, I used a screw for this plate here coming in from the front, and that's probably the way I'm going to do it on this one as well. Anyway, just thought I'd mention that, and yeah, I got to get to work here. I'll try to get as much done as I can today so I can get the transport done tomorrow and all that other good stuff. I would really like to have this deck back in the customer's hands by July. I don't know if I'll make it at this rate, but we'll see. All right, 6 of the 8 muting transistors were bad enough to require immediate replacement. Beta gain wasn't below spec, but they were getting close, and one was getting real close to being below spec. So it's good that I changed them. I think the problem with the power on pop was caused by the fact that that those particular transistors had just so little beta gain that they just weren't able to do the job anymore. Those 2 locations have the highest beta gain transistors of the new ones I bought. They're something like 1367 or something like that. And the ones that replaced, or the ones they replaced, were 720 or something like that. The lowest one I found was 650. And the spec was supposed to be something like 500 or 550. Anyway, only 2 of them were good enough to be salvageable. The lowest one of those is 800 or something like that. And the other one is 960, which is approaching the quality of the worst of the new ones. So hopefully it behaves itself a little better. I think the way the muting circuit is designed on this is for the power mute function. The transistors are designed to kick on for a moment after power is removed from the device, but before the capacitors have a chance to bleed out. So clearly they weren't turning on hard enough anymore to actually do that. So I'm kind of thinking about maybe I replace all these transistors on my 680ZX now, because I have found a lot of those transistors kind of getting weak in this. So maybe it's a good idea for me to order some more of those before I can no longer get them. Progress report. Transport has been removed and is ready for service. And I have just finished cleaning the controls and replacing the tape well and counter indicator lamps on the deck. I wasn't able to use the actual JKL parts because apparently I didn't order them, but I actually did have the correct size lamps. They're 12 volts, about 60 milliamps. The ones I used are 70 milliamps, so a little bit brighter than the originals would have been, but I'm still not entirely happy with how bright they were. I think they could use a little more brightness, honestly, but it was either that or go in with LEDs, and I think I would rather just keep these kind of original, using lamps and not LEDs. Anyway, I'm about to service the front control panel, and I wanted to point something out to you. Sometimes these break here, these eject linkages. Often it's just this little arm back here that breaks. Sometimes it's down in the pivot, and when the pivot breaks, good luck, you need a parts deck for that. But what a lot of people usually do with these is they fill this area with epoxy just to strengthen it so it never breaks. And I believe I will be doing that on this and my 680ZX. So, going to be doing that shortly. Anyway, I want to get to the panel lamps first. I tried my JKL number 23s in the tape well illumination circuit, but they weren't bright enough, so I've repurposed those, and I'll put those in here instead. I believe JKL number 23 is the right call for these. Anyway, I got to get started on that, so I will get started and get finished. Okay, it is officially time to do the transport service for my customer's 670ZX. And I don't think it's going to be too difficult at all, but just a few things I wanted to mention is I've always heard that ESL has been known to upgrade things as they get them in. And this deck would apparently be proof of that, because if we look down in here, you can see that the idler arm is metal. This deck would have originally had the plastic one that we saw in the 482. So they've upgraded that. And the reason why this particular transport is refusing to go into play mode after rewinding is because that metal idler arm down there, the pivot in it, is dirty and needs to be cleaned out and relubed. So that will be fixed very shortly, today at the very least. I had intended to come at this on the weekend, except for the fact that Mother Nature had other ideas. The problem with doing lightning photography is you got to be on Mother Nature's schedule. So you have to be ready to just drop everything and go out. And that's what happened on Saturday. I found myself out at a ghost town I've been trying to get lightning at for years, and I finally got it this time, but I was still out there until like 2 o'clock in the morning, so basically ruined my entire weekend for getting any actual work done. So I'm having to do this on Wednesday, having shot my video on that Rotel processor yesterday. Anyway, I thought I would show you guys this stuff first. I have my recordings in for doing the recording test on this deck. As promised, Saisons. And I think this is going to be the one I go with. This is an extremely impressive recording. And of course it would be because it's Telarc. Anyways, I got a lot of work to do, so we best get started, or I best get started. A lot of this will be off camera because you've seen all of it before, but what I want to do is I want to get you a look at the inside of underneath the sliding head block plate, just so you can see what the lube is like under there. Very likely the damping grease that's behind there will not need to be replaced, as was the case for my 680ZX, if you can believe it. The damping grease was fine in it. I only had to replace all that nasty tan stuff. And that's what I'll be doing here as well. And another thing is, I'm having a battle with myself about the motors on this particular transport. You see, the real motors almost never need servicing on these transports. They're usually holding up pretty well. So the usual play is to just lube the front bearing and see if it holds up during testing. And that's probably what I'll do. If the motor needs more help than that, I can get back into it. But As of right now, I am not planning a full motor service. These aren't like the Sankyo transports where these develop dead spots. They run at a high voltage all the time and rely on the clutch action in the reel tables to not overstress the tape you're playing. So they're a lot more reliable than the Sankyo transports. With that said, one that I will have to service is this guy right here. These do need service. And basically I can prove that twice over now because my 680ZX had a dead one, I think. Yes, it was that one. And then the 482 had a bad one as well that I had to service. And as it turns out, the one from the 680ZX cleaned up better than the one from the 482, but whatever. So that will get serviced. I will probably lube the capstan motor inside and out, front and back bearings, and that's probably about it. And I'll fish my belts out as I go along here. I do have the dynamic technology belts standing by ready to go in. But one thing to mention is the dynamic technology people have said that you shouldn't clean their belts when you install them, so I will have to remember that. Anyway, I guess we can start out by giving you a look at the inside of this Azimuth module. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting till Christmas, because that's the only other time I've put that little box on camera, so let's start there. By the way, these use the exact same belts as the mode motor does. And here is the inside of the mechanism. I don't want to manipulate this too much right now because we need to get into the transport and fix the sliding plate under the recording head, but whatever. Now, in order to service these, what I like to do is I like to just take the motor out. Not the easiest thing to get out of there because you got this pulley on it to get out of the way, but it can be done. Now, when it comes to servicing, my brain really is out to lunch today. When it comes to servicing this, I would recommend that you take this clip out and pull this whole assembly out as one piece. Don't try to disconnect it from this collar. You will pay for that dearly. Trust me on that one. So I'm going to get my fancy pliers here so we can get that off. Just trying to keep just a little bit of pressure on there just so I can remove it without breaking the clip. And now we'll remove this assembly by releasing this catch up here, and then this should be able to come out. It's a little bit tight in there as well, but just be patient. And let me see here. How did I do this on the 680? There we go. And out it comes. And I will show you why you need to be careful with this. You see that little nub there? That will break off if you try to disconnect this from this. You don't want that. And I'm just checking now. Oh yeah, that's nice and free moving. I like that. That is not the case on the 680ZX. It's really binding up on that particular deck. And it kind of seems to me like this has wound itself all the way off the end of the thread. So it's probably been a while since this was last worked on. But I want to unwind it now so I can clean the threads with some iso alcohol and then thread that back on. I will not use any oil or grease or anything there. It's not necessary. Even though I used it on the 680 because that collar was so tight. If I had the proper thread dimensions, I could free that up a little better on the 680, but I don't. Clean up all the grease on the end here. We'll take a look at this belt. It's kind of getting glazed and hard, so that needs to be replaced. And since it is the same type of a thinger as this motor uses, then all I would need is 2 of those. Anyway, I will thread this back on. I'll try to go about midpoint with it. And then there's the inside of this, and this is the cable that controls the record azimuth right down there. You have to get the little insert in this arm to go over that little peg down there, and that'll do the job. Anyway, I've got to finish servicing this little box, and we'll continue. Okay, so the little box is about as serviced as it gets. New belt and everything installed, and I'm just kind of breaking in the motor right now just to see how well it's working, and I'm actually not sure about this. I may have to actually get in there to service that, but I'm not going to worry about that just now. This can be serviced at pretty much any time. I don't have to have the transport out of the deck in order to do that, so I'm going to continue as is. I've lubricated the front bearing. It's running fairly well, I will say that. Usually they don't consume that little current unless they are running well. So, like I said, I'll keep an eye on it and run it for a few more minutes like this, and if I feel like I have to rebuild it and service it, then yes, I will. And another thing to mention is I have discovered that the azimuth adjustment for the record head is not locked up on this, so I was able to set this at the midpoint for calibrations later. So, that was good. Alright, so ultimately I decided that I wasn't happy with the way this motor was working, so I went ahead and serviced it. Didn't get much of a drop in current consumption, but I did get some, and that's going to be good enough, I think. The point is I got some oil to the back bearing now, so this motor should be happy for a good long time. Alright, I am now working on the Capstan motor, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go much further than this. It's an FG servo motor, and you can see that it's real hard to get into this one. So I just don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything for it beyond servicing the front bearing. I will try to replace that electrolytic capacitor there, but this tantalum I don't have a replacement for. It's 2.2 microfarads at 25 volts or something like that. And it measures really high ESR, but like I said, I don't have that part. I just don't have it to replace it, so I can only do what I can do, I guess. Moving on, we are inside the transport now, and I'm just showing you exactly what needs to be done back here. And one thing I wanted to mention was, in order to get this sliding head block plate off on the other side, we do have to remove this clip to remove the arm that it's holding in. Has to be done, otherwise you can't do anything else. Anyway, here's the pivot I was talking about that's getting seized up on this one, right there. I will have to do something about that, and I will. And I also have to service the control motor as well. So I'll probably get that done first and then get after the rest of this. As you can see, it's still got a lot of this old tan grease left in there, but that will be going away presently and replaced. And I will be using Molykote EM30L for most of this, because most of this transport is either plastic or aluminum on plastic. So I think Molykote is the best answer for that rather than my Permatex stuff, at least for the head block and all that. And here we have the transport with the cam drive stuff removed. Here's the cam gear right here. You can see it's got these alignment marks on it to help you reset it if you have to. But usually I find I don't have to, unless something's wrong with the potentiometer and you have to replace it. Anyway, here's the 2 rollers that go into that cam gear. And when you reinstall the gear, this one has to be up over yonder. This is for the pinch rollers. It's easier to do this when the pinch rollers are seized up, but this one is not seized up, so I get to fight with it. Anyhow, the action on this isn't very good, so this has to be done on this particular deck. That'll be all that old grease still back in here. But the head block is actuated by this one over here. So what you kind of have to do is you kind of have to hold this one out here and push this one over here by manipulating the head block and the pinch roller arms. It's fun, but possible. And just like that, I have reinstalled these two gears. And don't worry about this black area around here. Over time, I think the rubber leaches out of the belt and gets into the plastic here, and there's just no amount of cleaning that actually gets that out. Ask me how I know. I've tried it several times on my other decks, and that's really the best you can do for it. Anyway, these two are fully lubricated now, and I'm kind of having a debate with myself on whether or not to pull this clip off and redo the grease in there. It's probably a good idea. The actual shaft itself is going to be nylon, so there's no reason to get in there for any lubrication, but it's just I'm kind of thinking about doing that pivot or that pivot underneath the clip, because it is not really moving very well there. Anyway, I will keep going. I still haven't done that motor yet. I should do that real quick. Okay, progress has been made. I got the reel tables done and the idler done. All that's fine. I've cleaned off a bunch of brake material. And I'm about to do the potentiometer, and I guess I'm saving this for last. Then probably once I get this serviced, I will go away and come back tomorrow for the front side of the transport. And at that time, I'll show you what's inside the sliding head block area. All right, there it is. The cam motor has been done. Purring like a kitten. You can't hardly hear it going at all. This is the new ground wire, by the way. I hope I left it long enough. If not, I'll cut another section and do it longer. There's the current draw at 9 volts. I'm very happy with how this turned out. It's doing very well. It wasn't in as good a shape as the Azimuth motor was, but it's good enough. It'll work. All right, day 2 of transport service, and I'm going after the entire front section of this today. But before I do that, I just wanted to touch on the Capstan motor again real quick and mention that I now have a replacement set of tantalum capacitors coming in to do that one capacitor I didn't change out in there. I just don't feel comfortable leaving a 46-year-old tantalum in there. So that's going to be replaced. And I'm glad I noticed that too, because now I need to do that with the 680ZX. That motor has not been serviced yet in the 680ZX. Now, when it comes to servicing the rear bearings on motors like this, I favor a more reactive than proactive approach, especially on a motor that's already working really well, as this one is. This one does not currently need the rear bearing to be serviced. I know that because it's getting 0.05% wound flutter with the old belt, which is right here, and very badly stretched. It is at least a ½ inch stretched. So, good to get a new one in there. Anyway, I recognize this motor, the way it's built. The CTF 900 had a very similar motor to this one. It didn't have the transistor bolted to the side like this one does, but it was an earlier, more crude FG servo version of this particular motor. And I was able to get to the rear bearing in that motor. However, it is very risky to do so with one of these. That's why I favor a more reactive approach and only go in there when I absolutely have to. No time sooner, because there's a very high risk that I could damage this motor just by getting in there. And these motors are not available. I've looked. What I would have to do is, if this motor ever had a problem, I would have to replace it with a single speed motor and delete the pitch adjustment in the front. Potentially. I would try to fix this one first, but this motor is really working quite well for now, so I'm only going to do anything about that rear bearing if there's a need to do so. right now there is no need to do so. It's going to work years the way it is now, and work well for years. I'm fairly certain of that. Anyway, we do need to start work on the front of the transport. And the way you start working on the front of this transport is by removing the brackets that hold the transport to the deck. And good Lord, that is tight. Please don't break. I don't see why it would break, but I've got all those new standoffs in case I have to replace these. Has this ever been out before? I don't even know. It doesn't really feel like it has. And once again, I'll remind you that the clip for that arm has to be reinstalled yet. We'll do that after working on this sliding blockhead assembly. Little brass collar on this one. I'm going to have to remember that's there. I'll just put it with this bracket. And we'll get after this bracket on the bottom as well. This one has been off, I can tell. The top one has never been off before, but this one has. ESL would have been in here. I'm very sure of that. They would have lubricated the pinch roller pivots at the very least. And that's another thing I'm worried about with this particular deck is what did they use for paint lock on the pinch roller pivots there, or pinch roller collars. Got another brass collar here that goes on top of yonder. And this one we're going to have to delete a tie here. ESL probably left this in place, but I will not leave this in place because I'm going to be pulling the head block and such. And I don't want this bracket in the way at all. Now, what was I saying before? I got sidetracked with that. Anyway, I need that bracket removed so I can replace this lamp here. This one's not burned out because the deck was working, but I'll replace it anyway because it's good practice. I can't think of what I was going to say. I had no sleep at all last night, so I probably shouldn't even be working on this. But, come on, brain, what was I going to talk about here? Ah, yes, I remember now, the collars. If those are locked down with anything that's really resistant to me removing it, then I cannot use acetone to go in there and clean the paint lock out. I think that's what I was trying to say there. Reason why is because those collars are made of the same nylon that acetone melts. So basically I have to take those collars off from here and then just sort of pick the paint lock off afterwards. Otherwise, like I said, can't use acetone, so I'm not going to worry about that. What I am going to do is I'm going to worry about getting after this lamp here right now. I will do that off camera. All right, transport service day 3. My energy levels did not hold up long last segment, so I'm having to come back at this on Saturday. I noticed before I started on this today that there was a little bit of a cosmetic issue on the door over here. I'm not exactly sure what caused that, but I was able to get most of it out using 3000 grit sandpaper, so I made it look about as good as I can make it look. Now, as far as the counter goes, I did service this off camera, but I will go over it just in case. We need to actually pull this off the front anyway. All right, counter is off, and I can talk to you a bit about what you got to do if you have to replace one of these. The one from a 482 will work, as I found out, except there are some differences. On the 482, the reset linkage is over here. It's a white plastic piece on those. And on the 680, 670, and 660, the reset is on this side. You can just swap these over to the new counter, no problem. And also, from a 482, you'll have to change this pulley back here as well. Now, I noticed that this one was having a little bit of trouble re-engaging after it was reset. And the reason behind that is This area right down here has grease in it. So you want to replace that grease with something like Molykote EM30L. It's real easy to get this off. You just gently pry the catch loose and it will come off. Like so. And then the grease is just right down in that section there. Maybe you can see it better this way. Anyhow, like I said, I've already serviced this, so don't need to do anything more. I've added some oil down inside the shaft so it'll move freely again. I will do the same for the shutoff wheel down here as well. These do need to be lubricated. And what I've got to do now is I have to pull this big black plastic piece off so I can get at that switch and test it. It probably does not need service, that switch, but I will check it regardless. Make sure it's working. It's probably going to be fine with a simple spray cleaning, and I'm having to reach around cameras, and it's not the easiest thing. And there we are. So now I can test this switch and make sure it's good. This potentiometer has been worked on. It's fine. So from here, all I will do is I will take yonder door off so I can get in under here and do all the work I need to do under there. Okay, so the door is off, and I've been looking at this little cosmetic blemish again, and it appears that this is something I did, because there's a black mark on this cloth down here. Must have gotten some acetone on there or something, even though I didn't use much acetone at any point during service thus far. So I think the right thing to do is I've had a look at the 680ZX's door, and it does not have any kind of blemishes like that on it. So I think the right call is, since this is something I did, I will just swap this door with the one on the 680. I just can't do it right now because, well, I'm in the middle of a transport service here. I have to get this done before I can even do that. Otherwise, there's no room for me to even get the transport out of the 680 right now. So I will proceed, and then I will swap the door, and then this one will be perfect. I just want this to be perfect for my customer is all. Anyway, we are about to get access to the area we're going to have to relube. Sorry about bumping the camera. There's not really much choice where I've got things situated right now. And now here's the fun part. We have to get this plate off to relube with this area up here and the corresponding one down there. So first step to do that is take the heads off, of course. The alignment will have to be checked on these anyway, because of all the plastic Nakamichi used in these decks. I wish they wouldn't have used so much plastic, but it is what it is. Usually the plastic isn't a problem unless it's been stored improperly, in which case then it becomes a problem. And let's see, where do I go from here? Anyhow, we got to take the clips off for this plate down here. And now we disconnect the springs for the pinch rollers. And now we can remove this little do-jangler here. Maybe. There we go. Yes, and now I have to get the pinch rollers off. I'm going to do that off camera real quick. Okay, we're making progress here. I've got the pinch roller assemblies out, and they do need to be regreased again, even though it's already been done by ESL. It's been 30 years, and this grease is going bad again. So good to do it. Now, we have to get in under this block right here, this sliding piece. And the way you do that is, first I've removed a clip from up top here, from this post. And we'll just remove this little assembly here and set it aside. This will give us access. And you'll remember I pulled off a big clip from the back side, and that's for this arm right here. That's kind of why I need the counter stuff all flopping around loose and stuff. So we need to get this arm released. Got a big spring to take out here, if we can. Although actually I could just leave that hanging on. I don't actually need to remove that. I just need to pull the arm off. That's what I need to do. Like so. Actually, it looks like it was actually lubricated down in through the shaft. I just didn't use any lube on the 680ZX in this area because, well, it seemed like it was moving around fairly well. But if Nakamichi used lube there, maybe I should go ahead and do that. And this area will need to be re-greased. And this area over here, and these two, of course. And these two clips have to come off now because I need to get in under there. This is where this special pliers comes in really handy. It's a Knipex 4611G0. Very helpful with these types of clips, and this clip is kind of stretching. Yeah, well, I'll tighten it up again. Anyway, this can now come off. Watch out for the rollers. And all of this damping grease that's found back in here was good on the 680ZX, but I am not happy with it here. I think this needs to be done. Good thing I'm in a point where I can actually do that. So I will take the rollers out, like so. There's 3 of them. I will clean these areas up, and I will go in with my damping grease. This stuff right here. And just like that, the sliding head block plate is done. Had this clip go flying, but that one was stretched anyway, so I haven't bothered to look for it. I just put a new one on. I'm not really that happy with these Chinese clips. I had the first one I tried break on me, so hopefully I don't lose any more actual Nakamichi clips. But that one's holding up, so I'm going to let it be. Now, I think I'm going to move from there into head stuff. And dealing with the sliding plate assembly under the recording head is the same thing as you saw with the ZX9, so I probably won't do that on camera. I'll just pull the head block off and, well, might as well do that part on camera, pulling the head block off. Screwdriver's right here, after all. You just push in, turn 90 degrees, and then the retainer comes out. And now we can work with this. This grease will all need replacing, so I will do that now, off camera. Alright, I am in the middle of doing the pinch rollers. I've done this side. These were just about immobile. Like, this is really hard to spin. This is the take-up side. So it's no wonder this thing was eating tapes before it came to me. So I will make these happy and keep going. Pinch rollers themselves are a little bit worn, but they are, once again, decent and can still be reused. So that's what we're going to do, is reuse them. They are not needing replacement yet. I am 100% successful reusing old Nakamichi pinch rollers so far. Hopefully that keeps up. But for today, it is keeping up, so I will keep going. Alright, just checking the head alignment on this particular deck. I've just finished adjusting the playback head, but it is a good thing I have this microscope camera because the head tilt was off on both record and playback heads. So I'm glad I was able to deal with that. Anyway, it's good now. And I can keep going. Alright, transport service is done, and all I got to do now is swap over the door from the 680 and Also, wait for that capacitor for the Capstan motor. I'm not going to try to install the Dynamic Technologies belt just yet because I have to get in here again anyway, but whatever. Anyway, everything's been lubricated. Everything went well. Can't complain about nothing. These heads are in really nice shape on this deck. I have to say, very pleased with that. I think it's probably about the best head condition of any of the Nakamichis I've worked on since the ZX9, honestly. It's that good. I don't know if ESL replaced it or what, but this deck has had a little bit more hours on it than I thought it did. So maybe they did, I don't know. We'll find out what the frequency response is later. And belts have been belted now. This is 228 millimeters internal circumference. These are 0.7 millimeter belts, by the way. Factory original would be 1 millimeter square, but I like to use the nice thin ones just to keep the wow and flutter performance as good as it could be. Anyway, 228 for this belt, 100 for this one. It's a little bit smaller than the decks like the 482 use. Anyway, thought you guys might like to know that. Well, I got half the door swap job done. 680, I figured I might as well put it to work since it's already here, getting its door changed out for the one that was originally in the 670. It's actually easier to do this than I thought it was. I didn't have to take all of that thing apart in order to get the door out of there. You can just do it by, there's this one screw on this side, and then it just unclips from there, and it's not as hard as I thought it was. Anyway, might as well let that guy continue to entertain me. By the way, you have no idea what it took to get those meters working in that deck. You will on Christmas Eve, probably, maybe Christmas Day, I don't know. But it took a lot. Anyway, I gotta hurry up and repaint that thing. I don't know. I hope July will be a little hotter, so I've got decent weather for this. It's just been cold and wet and rainy all June, so whatever. Oh, and speaking of paint, I got this stuff for the Pioneer A0012. I'm not sure if it's going to work well, but it's hammered, and I thought I'd give it a shot for that beast. Anyway, I better get this door on this transport, so I'm gonna do that. Well, there it is. Transport done. Including new door. Well, new old door. Had to take this all the way back apart again because this little arm had jumped out of the cam. So it wasn't possible for me to get the door on the way it was because the head block was engaged. Fun stuff, but she's good now, fully lubricated, all good. Hopefully. I don't want to have to get in there again, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to throw that back in the deck now and throw that back in the bedroom so I can listen to it through the DCMs again. Love this deck. And this is the only time you're going to see it actually doing stuff until Christmas, I think. It's only over here now because I needed it for parts. Anyway, what are you going to do? All right, folks, Sunday is meter rework day, and I am finding issues with these meters. I will attempt to demonstrate. I tried to adjust the right channel meter, and I found that it is getting stuck. What this means is that the pivot point in back needs work. It just basically needs to be decrustified. This one's fine. It's going back the way it should. It's not adjusted yet, but I'll get to that. But what you have to do in order to decrustify the pivot points is you have to get back here into yonder little holes there, and you have to sort of either pick off the paint lock that's in there or use acetone and dissolve it and then just sort of work that screw back and forth until the crustify comes out of it. So I am working on that now, and I'm finding that my littlest swabs here are just about good enough to get inside the back of this thing to dissolve that paint lock. I'm just taking it real nice and slow on this because you can see what I've got to deal with there. Anyway, the old lamps are right there. I'll replace them, no worries. But you have to be extremely careful when it comes to these meters. Otherwise, you'll damage them. And where are you going to get another set of meters? I ask you. And there you have it. The meters are done, and we've got light on both sides again for the first time in who knows how long. I'm not 100% happy with the way this meter is sitting in its resting position. I'd like it to be on that first white line there, but it's not. The left channel is a little closer. The thing about that is I'm not exactly sure what else I can do more to get that to line up. I freed it up, but I was not able to find any combination of those screws in order to get the pointer over at that line. So it's going to have to be what it is, I think. 46-year-old decks. You can't be expecting perfection from stuff this old. At least that's the story I'm going with. There's probably some way I could have possibly done that, but with this being my first service job, I just don't want to get in there and break anything. And those were extremely delicate adjustments. I had to use this screwdriver to do them. This is the 1.2 millimeter screwdriver from this vessel kit. And that's what it took to do it. And Lord have mercy, that was really, really stressful just doing what I did, just to get this right channel meter freed up the way it is. Anyway, it's freed up. Both channels are moving freely. I'm gonna just call it right there. I'm gonna say that's the best I can do for this point in my service journey. Okay, folks, so it has come to my attention that tomorrow is Canada Day. So I think what we're gonna have to do is hold off on doing any future repairs that this deck needs in another video. The one where I hopefully will get the recording test done and get everything finished up and polished up and all done. I'm just not sure that this capacitor is going to show up this week because of, like I said, Canada Day. So I think it's probably good to just leave this out, actually, and set it aside someplace safe so I can just get back into the Capstan motor real quick and replace that capacitor. Otherwise, the deck's really not needing too much more than that. I've got pretty much everything done now except for the switch cleaning in that sideboard, but that can be done at any time, maybe a couple of hours and some afternoon. That'll be easy to do. So I think I'm just going to put this on the shelf and hold off until that capacitor gets here and move into something else in the meantime. There's a few things I can think of to do around here. A few dozen, 100 things to do around here. I do have a couple of lab group and amplifiers I do have to fix up now that I've got a working processor for the home theater upgrades, but there's still really no rush for that. Could finish up a couple of old projects. That's another thing I could do. That Pioneer turntable needs to get working again. Especially since I just found out that there's an actual record store in Swift Current I never knew about until relatively recently, which is crazy to say considering that she is in the same building that my parents had their music store in back in the 80s. So, yeah, I want to get that Pioneer turntable going again probably within July sometime. I bought 6 records there last time I was in town, so I need something to play them on. That's all I can say there. Anyway, I'm going to conclude this video. I'll go render the video so you can have the update on video on this deck like I promised my customer I'd have for this week. And yeah. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.